Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mugwump Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start.
Hello, and welcome to the Docking Bay 77 podcast. I'm your host, Amber Lewis, taking over hosting duties from our fearless leader, Dayton Johnson. Joining me today for this book club episode is Robert Burnett. Welcome, Robert.
Hello.
And J.P. Peach. Welcome back, J.P.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So before we jump into our topic for this episode, I gave you guys a little assignment. Give me your go-to book recommendations when someone comes to you and says, I'm out of stuff to read. What's the one you always jump to, JP?
Well, I don't, because all my friends are movie friends, but I thought of one that is kind of relevant to a current situation. I am a mystery person, and I, for years, was all about the Patricia Cornwell K. Scarpetta mystery.
Yes, I love those.
And there's the fifth one is called The Body Farm. And that one was really appealing to me because it takes her to a real place in Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee. If you can't handle the accent, that's what that is. And the University of Tennessee has something called the Body Farm. And it is a forensic science training center for their students. And you can choose to donate your body after death to the Body Farm, where they can use you for forensic learning.
Yeah.
And that book is called The Body Farm, and she goes there. So I thought that was kind of cool. And they've just filmed the new Scarpetta series for Amazon Prime here in Tennessee. So they're actually, be on the lookout for that if you have Amazon Prime in the next probably few months or year.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and so the fact that they filmed that here, I'm like, you had better have gone to the Body Farm. I'm sorry. Why else would you be filming in Tennessee unless you're going to go use that?
She took the time to write a whole entire book about it.
I know. But anyway, I love that character, strong female character, smart, and mystery. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, I haven't read that one, so I've written that one down.
Okay, good.
So, Robert, I can only imagine. What do you throw at people when they say, I'm out of stuff to read? What do you got?
I tend to go by authors as a rule, and I kind of seek out what they like. But I am really stuck on British authors in particular, and I like things that are light and fun to read. So I will recommend P.G. Wodehouse for Jeeves and Wooster. I'll recommend Evelyn Waugh. There's a lot of authors. If I like an author, I read all of their books, and so for me, it's easier to recommend an author. But I did pick one particular book that is kind of a standalone of its own type, and also a standalone for this author. Perhaps because of the coincidence, the book is called The Man Who Was Thursday. And
that's awesome.
Came out in 1908 by G.K. Chesterton, and was very famous back at the turn of the century, the last century. He was up there with H.G. Wells and Shaw and all those authors. And he's best known today for mystery stories with Father Brown. In fact, I think they did a TV series with Father Brown, maybe with Tom Bosley or someone.
Like PBS or something, or BBC.
Yeah, no, I think Father Bosley with Father Dowling. I mixed it up.
Okay.
Yes, and PBS. But anyway, yes, the Father Brown mysteries are what Chesterton is known for. But at the time, he was known as the Prince of Paradox. He wrote lots of stories with little twists and paradoxes in them. But he has this one standalone novel called The Man Who Was Thursday. And it is this weird mashup of fantasy and surrealism and thriller novel and mystery. So it's a lot like the book we'll be talking about today.
Yes.
I don't like to say a lot about it because it is just a delight from start to finish, but it involves a secret society in England and with some sort of mysteries and things involved. And then it just spirals from there. So it's almost anybody can find something to enjoy in it, whether you want the mystery angle or just the weird kind of British Monty Python-ish humor, or you can approach it a lot of different ways. But it's a great book to read. And I thought it was a nice fit with tonight's discussion.
Yes, leave it to you to find a tie-in novel. I love it. And now I've got two new books to read.
More rules is better. The more
Right.
you know.
All right. Well, my recommendations, I always have the same ones. Because like I love Stephen King, but once you get into that, like his collection is so huge, like it's just unwieldy. So the ones that I always go to are, first of all, the Passage trilogy by Justin Cronin. It's a futuristic, it's kind of spooky love story, scientific mystery kind of thing. The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. That is, she writes these amazing, just little villages in England and family dramas, and she just has this very unique way of writing that I love. And then of course the book we're discussing today, 2001's The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. Try to get this into as many people's hands as possible. I feel like it's a mission.
I can vouch. I would not have heard of this book, or would not have come to it as early if you had not. Well, I don't want to say forced it on me, but
no,
well,
strongly suggested.
Well, you did, and it was right up my alley. So I thank you for that. And but yeah, I'm a testimonial.
Yeah, my friend Carter knows. I'm like, did you read that yet? Did you read that yet? I bought you a copy. Have you read it yet? I've even got my Special Ops 27 shirt on. Like I am constantly advertising for this book. And listeners, as an additional treat for both you and for us, we also have available the interview that Robert and I were able to do with the author of the book, Jasper Fforde. JP unfortunately couldn't join us that day, but Robert and I had a delightful time speaking with him. And, they say to never meet your heroes, but I am telling you, he is the nicest, most interesting, most intelligent guy. And I am still just on cloud nine after our discussion. I'll never get over it.
It was fun. It was such a great interview, and you came up with such great questions. But by the time we were done, I felt like we were all friends. And I, honestly, like at least once or twice a week since then, I keep thinking, I need to ask Jasper about that, or I need to see what I'm like. Wait, like we're not really that friends, but
right?
He was just, no matter what we wanted to talk about, he was so funny and so informed, and so it was a blast. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to reach out to him.
Well, we're friends because with the scheduling and everything and emailing back and forth, we went from like Mr. Fforde to, Jas. So
well,
if I have any more questions,
we're on first name basis. I'm just saying, he's my buddy now.
Oh my, yeah. I'll send you any questions. I think I'm still a little shy, but remarkably, but yeah.
Right. I was just more starstruck than anything else. So I'm just glad that I was able to get through it without just like, you're wonderful. I love you.
He's a talker. I had listened when I was kind of trying to come up with some possible interview questions you could use. I listened to some of his stuff and I was like, she is going to have zero problem with him. Yes. He is a talker.
Well, and he was so kind about it because he said, is this going to be, long or short? Because, I'll tailor my answer to whatever like time constraints you're working with. And it was such a self-aware, like kind thing to be like, I'll talk as long as you want.
Yes, and he would.
Yeah. Well, and he's so interesting. He's had so many different, you know, jobs and has so many different perspectives on things that he's just fascinating. So, to our book. We're going to begin with a synopsis. The title is The Eyre Affair. Eyre is Eyre, as in Jane Eyre, the classic book by Charlotte Bronte that is heavily referenced throughout our story. The synopsis from the back of the book reads, there is another 1985 where London's criminal gangs have moved into the lucrative literary market, and Thursday Next is on the trail of the new crime wave's Mr. Big. Acheron Hades has been kidnapping characters from works of fiction and holding them to ransom. Jane Eyre is gone, missing. Thursday sets out to find a way into the book to repair the damage, but solving crimes against literature isn't easy when you also have to find time to halt the Crimean War, persuade the man you love to marry you, and figure out who really wrote Shakespeare's plays. Perhaps today just isn't going to be Thursday's day. Join her on a truly breathtaking adventure and find out for yourself. Fiction will never be the same again. So this is the first in what's coming up to be 8 book series. Robert, can you give us some facts about the book, the writing and the publishing of it?
Yeah, a little bit. And of course, some of this, Jasper, we call him Jasper.
Yes.
Jasper covered in our interview, but yeah, he began work in the film industry and lensing, as they say, and started writing both screenplays and novels, and kind of back and forth, and had many rejections. I think he said he had written ultimately 5 novels prior to this one being published. This was his first published, but I think it was his 4th, if I recall, written. And he had considered this one to be a screenplay as well, which I can't even fathom for his
I don't
dense
even know how you would
as
even start.
writerly as it is. But yeah, and it's finally a publisher took a chance with it, and it got published, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list, and then he followed it up and has done at least a book a year, and has several different series going along with the Thursday Next books. There's a couple other series. There's one with kind of a Mother Goose theme that is fun, and another one as well. So that's kind of all I've got to say about that. But the lesson, I guess, is keep writing and keep submitting, because eventually one of your books will make it, and then you'll be talked about on our podcast.
Right. Well, and it was also kind of like the right place, right time.
Yeah.
Where he talked about it being, like in the early Harry Potter era. And, publishers were kind of looking for fantasy and, kind of moving, not as afraid to go in that direction, I guess.
Well, and the Back to the Future films were out, where we're jumping forward and backwards into different realities and altering them. And so, yeah, it was in the air, but he did it in such an original way that it is stuck around and wasn't just a one-hit wonder and then disappeared like so much of my 80s is.
Right. So we're going to move on to some opening thoughts about the novel. As I told Jasper in our interview, I heard about this reading Entertainment Weekly, which back in the day, that was like my Sunday paper. I sat and just read it cover to cover. And they just had like a little blurb in the book review section saying this new book is coming out, and it's like Monty Python mixed with Doctor Who and a dash of like classic literature. And I was like, well, that's all I need to hear, and immediately sought it out. And like this book that's about the best description I think you can give of, the chaos that ensues. So when Dayton said he wanted to add more books to our discussion topics, this was like the first thing I wanted to talk about, because it's like right up our alley with what we talk about already on the show. It hits on all the, topics that our listeners enjoy. And, it's just absolutely one of my all-time favorite books, and it's great as a standalone. But if you're having fun and you really like it, like I said there's 7 more to go. So you're in for like a real treat if you want to, really, keep going with it. Um, JP, this was your first time reading this book, no?
Yes, it was. And so I didn't know quite what I was getting
I'm
into.
equal parts nervous and excited. Like you're smiling. What's your opening thought on
No,
on the Eyre
overall
Affair?
it was good. And I will tell you, having come from the film industry, you can tell Jasper is from the film industry because it's written in a way that's almost edited, what I would call edited for film.
Mhm.
And so
The
it's easy.
action scenes especially.
Yes, exactly. And so it's easy to visualize them as you're reading. And so it's a very fast-paced read in that way. And it's fun. I mean, it's very, very fun. And I will tell you going in, I was nervous because I'm not like I said earlier, I'm a mystery novel person. If I'm going to sit and read, it's typically a mystery. So I haven't read those classic novels, since
Hmm.
school. And I was like, am I going to be able to follow this? And he does a really good job of leaving some things that I did have to kind of look up, online to see what he was talking about, but that may have just be the difference between British and, American
Hmm.
knowledge and humor. And but in general, everything you needed to be able to follow the story, he gave you. And that's a sign of a good author to get through
Yes,
there. So, and I'm always going to love something with a strong female character where
absolutely.
she's you know, very smart and capable and brave and also a little nutty and,
Yes.
to make it realistic. And so I was pleasantly surprised. I read it twice to prep. So
Yay.
yeah, yeah. And it was easy. It was easy to get, to go through it twice.
Hmm.
There's a lot going on. So I had to,
Yes.
the first time it's kind of an assault on the senses a little bit because there's a lot going.
Yeah, you're in this alternate 1985, which those of
Yeah.
us that were there in 1985 were going, what?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I had fun. So thank you. I was excited when you
Oh,
asked
yay.
me to be on it because, like I said, I feel like I'm that type of person that I almost feel like I need to be given an excuse to sit down and enjoy a book.
Hmm.
And so as soon as you asked me to do this, I was like, oh, now I have
Yes.
a reason to sit and read in the evenings.
Yep. Oh, I have to prep.
Yes, and had a fun time. So thank
Oh,
you.
good. Oh, yay. I'm so glad. So, Robert, your opening thoughts.
Oh, I was glad to reread it. I read it when you recommended it way back, and it's funny. I was trying to recollect why I could have missed it because it is kind of in the school of things I like to read, and I remember when I was reading about the book notes too, when it came out, the reviews were mostly not great. And even though Entertainment Weekly was my Bible, mainly for Libby Gilman Waxner,
Yes.
but, I remember seeing that little squib, but I'd read some more substantial reviews that just were not great, and so I was like, well, and but somehow word of mouth, and I think it was booksellers handing it to people, got it up on that bestseller list. But this time it was a lot more fun to read because, to JP's point, it is super dense and there's a lot of characters and a lot of kind of sci-fi gizmos and gimmicks and this alternate timeline, and it's English, so there's just vocabulary sometimes different than what we use. And the first time, I enjoyed it tremendously, but this time around, it was more fun to see and kind of slow down and take it all in. But yeah, really really enjoyed it then and enjoyed it a different way this time around. And I think another dip in another year or so will be, well, yeah, probably another year. So I will be a good thing for that. Because what I want to do now, of course, thank you so much, Amber, is reread the other six before the new one comes out in November.
Yes.
So that I can be ready for it. Because I have not read those for years either. So I need
I
to
was
get
going to say,
caught up.
did you read them all or no?
I read them all as they came out. I
Okay.
think I might have missed number 7 because when I was, hearing about number 8, I was like, 8, and I was kind of counting on my fingers, going, "Well, I got 6, I think." So,
Hmm.
anyway, yeah, I'm gonna try and bash through those this summer into good hammock reading, and then
Yes.
I'll be ready for that. But it was a fun reread, and especially being able to look at it in a different way than I did the first time round.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad. It's always like I'm so excited to give it to people, but then I'm always so worried too. Like, what if they hate it and they just look at me like, are you nuts? What do you even want to read this? This is such a waste of time. I know what you mean about the vocabulary. I on this reread found a word I had to look up because I had no idea. I thought I knew what she was talking about, but I had like no real idea. And it was towards the end, when she's on the grounds of Thornfield Hall and she talks about the hawthorn tree next to the ha-ha. And
Oh
I was
yes.
like, what is a ha-ha? What is she even? Is this like the bookworms are throwing out dashes or what's happening? And so I looked it up, and listeners, it is a wall in the side of a hill in that they put in gardens in England. So
And it's a very particular kind of wall.
yes,
I
there's
think I
an
learned about
accompanying
this.
picture with the definition that was very helpful.
Yeah, because the idea of them is that while you're sitting on your stately manners, back porch, and look down the hill, it looks like it's all a hill. But actually, if you look at it from like the bottom of the hill, there are walls at certain points that kind of step it up to sort of terrace it. And so that is the ha-ha wall. And they were called ha-ha because it was a little visual joke because it looks like there's no wall there, but really there is a wall there. So
Aha.
they thought that was witty. Yes, in 1890 it slayed them,
Right? Very specific joke for very, very rich people.
I got stuck on a bunch of technical language too. There was a word, and I cannot recall it now. I think it starts with a C, because I had to look it up. But where their car is zooming along by the vortex, and they kind of basically jump the curb, and the car flips a little bit. And he used this really specific word, and I looked it up, and it was like, the word used when an object's force is opposite the direction it is moving and causes it to go. And I was like, dear God, couldn't you just said like skid or something? But no, we got all the fancy words. So it was nice. It's not just entertaining, it's educational, kids.
Right? Well, and that's kind of moving into what we like about the book. One of the things that I love is if you take the time to kind of research, there's all these like double meanings with everything. Like he comes up with really great names for his characters, and a lot of them are referenced from something else. Like several of the names are parts of bicycles, and then other names are taken from, there is a radio broadcast, and I think it's called the Shipping News, and it's basically like a meteorological broadcast, like so that the wind's coming from this direction at this speed and the barometric pressure is this, and it's very soothing. It's on the Calm app as like something you can fall asleep to. You're just listening to this British guy rattle off, and in Cornwall it will be 82 degrees and whatever. And so he took a lot of names for his characters from the places that are mentioned in that broadcast. And I just love those layers. JP, what else is something that you liked about the book besides, the language?
Well, I do want to mention one term that I had to look up that I thought was fun was there is one of the SO9 guys that come in and help them, and he starts talking about flutter on the GGs.
Oh yeah.
And I had
He's
never
betting
heard
on the horses.
He's betting on the horses. And I was like, okay, I kind of know this is about horses, but what is he talking about?
Right?
So there's all that kind of fun stuff in it. And so I enjoyed that. But going into our likes, I have there are several on there. One is the use of the snips or clips from other books and interviews that are at the beginning of each chapter.
I love those.
Yes.
I wondered if you would find them annoying, but I really like them.
No. And the first one, as an example, so the listeners can kind of understand what we're talking about. The very first chapter starts off with a quote from a book called A Short History of the Special Operations Network by Millen DeFloss. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. And so he kind of gives you explains what the Special Operations Network is, so the readers know that. But then he goes on and he says there's, this saying, if you want to be a spec op, act kind of weird. And I'm like, that sets the whole tone.
Yeah.
It not only gives good, solid information that the reader needs, but it sets the whole tone for the whole book.
I'm so glad you mentioned those little prefaces to every chapter, JP, because
Yeah.
I thought they were one of the many things I liked about this book was just how literary it is, and the fact that, I mean, it's very old school. If you read anything from the 19th century, there's always little quotes and excerpts and epigrams at the beginning of every chapter, and they're everywhere. Louisa May Alcott used them, and Dickens used them, and everything. And it's like, what better to like make this world more real? I mean, everybody in this world is obsessed with literature and with reading, and it's just like this national pastime more than I guess we would have, football or whatever this year's popular TV show is by comparison. But in this Thursday Next world, it's all reading classics. Everybody. And so the idea that within this, of course, every character in the book has written their own book as well, because we have excerpts from books by Bowden and by Thursday and by Millen DeFloss and by, I think, Mycroft, her uncle. Everybody has also had a book, at least one book published
or
in
an
this world.
interview.
Yes.
Some of them are just interviews, which I thought was great.
So it fits so beautifully into this conceit of this is an alternate reality where people like to read more than anything else, and people get into heated battles over who really wrote Shakespeare and so on. Which is where I would live if I could live in that world. But but I just thought, what a great little nuance to put in this kind of anachronistic. Of course, they all have written books as well. They all have books about their books and about themselves. And I have a little bit more to say about that in my dislike section as well. But I'll get to that shortly. But yeah, our likes overlap there, JP.
Yeah, oh, great. Well, also, one of the things I thought, obviously we've talked about, is the use of humor. Some, just overall,
Yes.
is great. And one of the examples that I really enjoyed is, okay, so there's this division of the government called the Chrono Guard, which deals with the most bizarre things you can deal with, time travel, the whole thing.
Yes.
And so it's the craziest division. Yet almost every time it's talked about in the book, it is joined with this kind of explanation of how great the pay and benefits are for the people who work in that division. It's very practical.
Yes.
And so I really enjoy that kind of, opposite thing where you're thinking nobody in their right mind would go into that, and then he gives you why they go into it.
Yes.
Because it's the best retirement benefits you can get.
Yes.
And so people go into it.
The one character gets into this like time vortex, and I think he's gone, what is it, like a day in real time, but or in the time he spent
in his time, yeah.
But it's like 70 some days that he is gone in our world, and so he gets like time and a half and overtime for 7 weeks of being gone for a few hours.
Exactly,
because he walked up and put a tennis ball in the hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I have a hard time. We've talked on our science fiction episodes earlier this year. We talked about the time machine, among others. And I love time travel, but I have a hard time with time travel because the paradoxes just like melt your brain. And I love the way Jasper handles this, where, one of my favorite lines is Thursday is talking to her dad, who is in the Chrono Guard, and he brings her a Beatles album from like 74. And she goes, didn't they break up in 72? And he goes, well, not always.
Yeah.
And it's just such a simple, explanation. And then there's another time where he's like, well, what happened to this person in history? And she tells him, and he's like, well, what happened to Nelson? And she says, well, he died at Trafalgar. And he's like, he did? Oh, well, some you win. And it's just like this very matter of fact, like No, it doesn't make sense. And I understand it because I'm in the Chronogard and you don't have to understand it. And we're just going to move on and accept it. And I think that's probably the best way to handle time travel.
Yeah. Although he wasn't my favorite character, the dad has one of my favorite moments in the book. It's toward the end. It's a very climactic scene, and the dad is in part of the Chronogard, travels through time, and when he pops up and visits Thursday, everything freezes. Time just stops, and then they have their conversation or whatever they're doing. And it recurs a couple times throughout the book early on to kind of introduce the idea of Chronogards and her relationship with her dad, and then once or twice more. But near this very intense climactic, like what is going to happen? How are they going to get out of this sequence near the end? Boop, then dad shows up, and I laugh out loud every time because I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, it just.
I love how he's like, am I interrupting? Would you like me to leave? And she's like, no.
Yeah. It's like an old movie serial with the cliffhanger. Like, what's going to happen now? And all of a sudden, then dad shows up. And for the first time, you don't want to see him. You want to like get on with it and find out what's going to happen. So, yeah, the use of how he pops in and out is fantastic.
So what else is on your list, JP? Is that it or you got some more?
I have one quick one, and I'm not sure. And I go back and forth whether I like this or not, but so it could
That's okay.
end up on my dislikes at some point.
Right.
But it really seemed very relevant to current affairs, a couple of the storylines that were in it. So you actually, with the whole fact that the Toad News is the main news source out there and kind of how they operate, but there really is this huge Goliath corporation that's kind of running the show and kind of telling them what they can and can put out as news. And the Russia-Crimea war.
Yes.
That's never kind of ending in it. And I was just like, wow, when was this book written? How did he see into the future?
Right? Maybe he's in the Chronogard. We don't know.
Yeah, and things like that. So I just personally, it helped with everything that was going on in it to kind of visualize this world, because some of it we're living in right now.
Yep. I loved when I saw Wall-E. And they talk about BNL is the big shopping conglomerate, and the head of BNL ends up being the president of the United States and everything. And that's kind of like Goliath, where they started out like they helped England after the war, and then they just took over. And if you look in, I don't know what books you guys were reading in, but like in the back of the book, there's like an ad for Goliath, and it's stamped like certified by Goliath as acceptable reading and stuff like that. So he really, like, if you have the tactile book, he just keeps running with that gag.
Yeah.
Well, his world building is amazing, and that was one of my likes as well, was that there is so much going on. It's not just an alternate timeline. There's also this whole topsy-turvy world where books are almost more valuable than anything else to the public. And then we have some time travel elements and other kinds of scientific things that we do not do now. And yet you can just kind of follow right along. As JP said, and I agree, absolutely, it's very dense. Sometimes I had to go back and go, where am I at? But he has created this whole world that you just get, and it adheres together. And it is weirdly prescient, because so many satirists write satire about what they're seeing around him. And this book was written, in the late 1980s. I mean, almost 40 years ago now. It was just amazing. To your point, that we have like, oh, we're on the Crimean Peninsula, and giant news organizations that can say whatever they want, even if it's nonsense. And I was like, to be able to, I don't know, forecast satire that well. I mean, when he wrote it, he must have thought, this is preposterous. These things will never happen. This is hilarious. And I'm kind of reading it going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
My newspapers, one newspaper's in one hand and the book's in the other, and I'm kind of like, well, which is which, So...
Yeah.
Except for the dodos. There are no dodo. We have not gotten our cloning that far advanced. We have a few lame sheep out there, I think, and a few other things, but we don't have dodo birds yet. So I'm disappointed.
I know.
Or over-the-counter dodo cloning kits. We
Yes.
haven't
Yeah.
gotten there yet.
I love how the one guy was talking about, what did he splice it with? A toad or something? I don't know. He had to make
Oh,
up the
yeah.
sequencing with another animal, and it turned the dodo like he didn't have feathers or something.
I
And
think, no, wasn't it with a flamingo? And so part of it
that's
was
what
like
he
hot paint,
was.
and it was like hot
Yeah,
paint.
that's what
Yeah.
it was. And he's like, but we love him. He's Chester. So, Robert, what else did you like about this book? I had such a hard time finding a dislike. I'll be honest. I
Well-
have like one nitpicky one, but
Well, my dislikes are extreme likes, sort of, if it'll make sense later. But anyway, I really also liked tremendously the first time, was when we get to Jane Eyre, and she doesn't show up for about halfway through the book. The Jane Eyre kind of plot, because we spend a lot of time with Dickens at first, and then we move on. But there's a section where she is explaining the plot of Jane Eyre to Bowden Cable, another
Yes.
bike name guy. And first time I read this book, I almost like threw it against the wall, because she's like, and then this happens, and then it's the end of Jane Eyre. I don't want to be spoilery for this book or that book. But I have read Jane Eyre. I like seen the movie Jane Eyre, the 43 version, the good version.
right.
And I was
Wait.
like,
We're gonna have to talk about that later.
oh, no, okay.
Because the 83 version would be the best version, but we're going to discuss that
right, another time. But no,
But yeah, I had the same reaction because
but I was like,
they
what?
changed the
And I was like-
ending.
And I was like, I can't imagine he like messed up, and I'm like,
right? Could
so
this
then I
get
was
past
like,
a publisher?
my head was spinning. I was like, where's the fact checker for this guy? Like, he just messed up something so obvious. But then I realized, oh dear God, this is like the big turning point of the plot. So then I was like, how are they going to get this book to end, both books, to end the way they're supposed to end? And it was the most clever, intriguing thing. But the first time I read it, I was just stopped what I was doing. I was like, what? I didn't know if I was angry, if I thought it was a mistake, but then when it's this time around, especially, I was like, this is so great, because as you're midway through and things are changing, all of a sudden it's just this like slingshot. It just like propels you toward the end of the book to find out how everything's going to be wrapped up.
Yes, I have read Jane Eyre a million times, have watched every filmed version. Like, I am obsessed. And so Liam has kind of through osmosis, it was never something he was really that into. He likes it now. But, when I first read this, he was very young. And so then when he read it the first time, he had never read Jane Eyre and hadn't really watched any of the movies to really watch them. He had just kind of been around while they were on. And so all of a sudden he comes to me and he's like, wait a minute, I don't understand. And he's asking me all these questions about the plot to Jane Eyre. So I had to explain, okay, no spoilers, but
Yeah.
you're not crazy. All is not as it appears. I love them reading themselves into the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did we feel about that? Was that easy to accept, or was it like, oh, come on?
It was, although they especially because when we learned about Thursday doing it early on, she's a little girl, and there is almost this element of, well, maybe she was just imagining it, or maybe she was just, pretending, until later it's revealed and other characters have it where they actually are able to do it. But it's introduced in such a way that for me, it felt organic, because you did not disbelieve it right off the bat, mainly because so much of the rest of the book, although a lot of it's mumbo jumbo, but has this ostensible science. Well, no, but I mean, it has an ostensible scientific explanation. Oh,
Yes.
we're able to do this because of this, and we have this machine or this gun or this ray or this whatever that is able to do this scientific thing, even if we don't really, But whereas the walking into the book is kind of like, what? Didn't quite, but because we got it first with young Thursday going into meeting Rochester in a way that almost seemed like it could have been her little girl imagination or a dream she had that seemed very real or whatever. It layered it in so that by the time it got more substantial to the plot, you could buy it. if that makes sense.
Do you agree, JP? Did you feel the same way?
Yes, I do think the way he laid it out, with starting with her incidents as a child, and then each time, also her would go in and reveal more about, the Japanese woman, who, would
She
allowed
can
her to
read you
do
in.
that.
Mrs. Nakajima can read you in.
Yes, and so I could buy it. I could buy that. Well, obviously, the fact that her dad could visit her and everything else would stop, but she could converse with him. Even
There's
that,
something different about
yeah,
her.
and she's making. So I'm pretty good about just going into a book and letting it be what it is, and not trying not to make too many judgments on it at the beginning. And so I didn't really have a problem with that at all.
Yeah. Robert, what are some more likes, or do you have more likes?
Likes? Oh, so many.
I mean, that's where I'm like, it's the whole book, so let's just talk about all of
it
it.
was just like the surprise and delight of it. Just kind of every page was there some new little joke or witticism or reference that just made it fun, even apart from the plot that goes like gangbusters.
Right.
I have to say though, and this slides over almost into dislike, but not really. I noticed in the book that especially this reading, because I was reading it more closely, I really love Jasper Fforde's his wit and his cleverness, but occasionally there were things that stood out as kind of like a joke. And some of them were in Thursday's narration, so it was like, well, maybe she just has a dumb sense of humor, but so much of what he wrote is just witty and clever and sly and all things I admire in all entertainment. But once in a while there'd be like these kind of like little hacha jokey like sitcom punchlines. And they did this reading through, I was like, you're better than that. You don't need to put those in. You're flying at such a great altitude. You don't need to put in, a little verbal pie in the face from time to time, because they stood out to me. And I was actually, before we got on, I was trying to like run through and see if I could find some specific examples, but I did not. I don't have any I can offer up. But there's a few times where they popped out, but mainly just the wit and the cleverness, to your point, with the naming of the characters and the flow from place to place and all the different. There's so many. I mean, there's the network, and there's Goliath, and there's Spec Ops, and there's the police forces, and there's all these different groups, and they're all funny, and they all have different little ticks that makes them just stand out.
Absolutely. One of my most favorite parts, that almost made my favorite character, but got pushed aside by another one. How do you guys feel about Spike and SO13? Being said, I adore him and love everything about it.
I love anything vampire though. So
right?
Yeah. So I loved him, and I love the way, he
was just so cool and so nice.
I know, and you felt for him. I know, and the fact that she,
he called for help, like knowing that nobody was coming, like
and she came, and that was her thing. Weirdly. Yes, and that helped you really like her, because you're finding out through the story that she went back in wartime when she was told not to try to gather up more of the wounded. That that's her personality type. She is gonna go in and help you. Yes. And he was so touched by the fact that she showed up. Yes. And I just loved the way that was handled, and how he ultimately becomes a huge important part of the story.
Yes.
With no spoilers.
Right.
Yeah, that was a little, I don't want to say off-putting, but the first time I was reading it through, I was like, oh, so it's an alternate world that has all these things going on, but there's also like supernatural monsters. Also, it was almost like one tick of the dial too far. Because as much as I enjoy the character Spike, some of those scenes reminded me of that old like Night Stalker TV show, or some of the like Sarah Jane adventures for Doctor Who, where it's like monster of the week, and oh, now there's a werewolf in the classroom, and now there's a vampire in the office building or whatever. And I was just kind of like, you've got so much else going on. Do we need to have like supernatural things occurring too? But I guess when it's your first book, you just well, true, you just dump everything in and.
Well, and I love when he first meets her, or she first meets him, either way. And there's a dog in the back seat, and then when she gets out, it's turned into a man, and he's like, "You forgot to take your shot today. Naughty, naughty." And he's like,
Mr.
"I
Meekly,
know."
yeah.
Mr. Meekly, that wasn't cool. All right, as much as I hate to even acknowledge that this is on the agenda, JP, do you have any
you're going to be first.
dislikes of the well, because mine is so stupid. I mean, I'll go first. The only thing I don't like is he names things so well, and I love the character names that he comes up with, and I cannot stand that he has two characters named Jack Shit and Braxton Hicks. Like, those names are so dumb. I can't stand it. So that is my one little nitpicky, Jasper, I love you, but my one little nitpicky dislike in the whole thing.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't even really care that much.
I think I may be about to break your heart a little.
Oh, God, I'm so afraid.
But it's some of it is what we've almost Robert's almost prefaced. When he says dense in my world, he tries to do too much in the one book. There's action, standard theft storyline, sci-fi gadgets, wartime politics, wartime trauma, conspiracy theories, astronomy, secret societies, and 2 love stories. It's too much. And he didn't need it all. And so it could be a little much for some readers who are kind of willing to get through all that. For example, to me, there are too many names. There are over 60 characters.
Yeah, you meet a lot of people.
Over 60. And they're all named something kind of funny or British. And my problem was that he would bounce back and forth between whether in a chapter they were being called by their first name or their last name. So he wasn't consistent in that to help the reader keep all these people straight. And then he would have things like, you've got the commander, Braxton Hicks, but then her new partner, Bowden Cable. Well, Braxton Bowden. They'd be back and forth, and you're like,
well, and he's not even like Braxton Hicks isn't even her boss. It's her boss's boss.
Yeah.
Her boss is Victor Analogy. So I always have trouble with the hierarchy within the Spec Ops, office. Like, who is she actually reporting to? Like, she really just kind of does whatever she wants. But
well, maybe that's a satire on bureaucracy, where there's like 200 chiefs, and she's the only one actually working. Everyone else is a boss of somebody.
Yeah.
I had that literally written down.
But it's hard to know, like, who is important and who do I have to retain this person because they're coming back later and they're really important, or is this just a passing through and I don't need to know? Know.
Well, see, and I think that's what. I think that goes back to what JP was saying about it's very filmic, which comes from his background, because in a movie, you can have those little great cameos where there's the secretary or the boss or the person in the restaurant.
I always thought of the Mos Eisley Cantina. Like, it's such a rich moment where you get all this information and all these different characters. And
But film works differently than that. So like when in a movie, you get the secretary and she says one sassy thing and you laugh. Well, then it kind of gets visual. If they come back to that secretary and you're in that same room, you're like, oh, it's her again. but to JP's point, yeah, so many characters, and
It's too
she
many.
moves through however many different offices and job titles and descriptions, and everyone has got at least one boss, and then one kind of sub boss, and then one kind of like other guy in the room, and it was a lot. And but I think that comes from his film background, where you can give, your extras, so to speak, one or two little lines of dialogue, and they pop. And then if you need them later, you remember them a different way than you do Braxton and Bowden and Hickston and all the other ones that are stacked up there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that falls into one of my dislikes too, was the naming. And Jack Shit, thank you, Amber. That's a good example of
Yeah.
one of the jokey ones that isn't clever. It's just kind of like a joke. It's just like,
Yeah.
I feel like it could be better. But
Yeah.
what I got bogged down in this time especially, so it's sort of a like and a dislike at the same time, but more of a dislike, is all of the names are like clever, clever, clever. But if you are me and you have like borderline apophenia and you want to like figure everything out, I was like, well, what is Braxton Hicks? Oh, okay, it's contractions. Like it's a kind of
You didn't know
contraction.
that? Well, of course you didn't.
No, I've never given birth, Amber. So I've never really had occasion to know about that.
It's funny
but
because
anyway,
as a woman, you just take it for granted, I guess, that I knew what that was.
but then I'm like, okay. So I'm like, some of the names like Landon Park Lane, got it the first time, got it 10 years ago when I read it. I got my decades wrong, by the way. It came out in 2001, not 91, so it's only 30 years old or 20 some years old, not.
Yeah.
Anyway, meanwhile, but like Landon Park Lane, got the joke. Lots of the names got the joke. But then I get to Braxton Hicks and I'm like, the man is named after false contractions. Okay, why? Because a lot of the names connect in some way to the person. So then I'm like falling down these rabbit holes of rabbits for sale, angoras. Anyway, no.
Yeah.
Inside reference.
Yeah, where I'm like, so his character got something to do with like, is he like a false agent? Because like a false contraction. Like I'm trying to like explicate everything because Fforde is so damn shrewd that when you start making people with jokey names, I'm like, are they more than jokey? Does it mean something else? And pretty soon I could not progress in the book because every time a new character was introduced, I had like my British dictionary and my Wikipedia, and I'm like trying to figure out what does this name mean? What does that name mean? And then so there are so many characters that do not necessarily come back or recur. I mean, like Mycroft loved it. Her uncle's name is Mycroft. Cracked me up. Brilliant, funny joke. But a lot of them did. I was like, okay, I figured it out. I tracked down that's the name of a city. It's the name of a soccer team. It's the name of a contraction, whatever. But I'm like, but then ultimately, like, why? Like, why? I mean, it. I don't know. It was like one more layer that I didn't. Well, yeah, but the rest of the book is so clever. It was like one more layer I didn't need because I was feeling like these were like clues or hints or things. I was trying to like solve everything in the book like it was a giant Sudoku or something, rather than just follow the already complicated plot and not have to like annotate and footnote every single character name and reference and thing in it. So it was a like because the names are funny and they're clever, but it sort of spiraled into a dislike just because I was like, what does this mean? Why did he choose that name for this character? And and that just made me go nuts because I'm like, her name is Sally. Like, what kind of name is Sally? I need her to have a great name. Like, she can't be Sally.
Listeners, I will tell you, if you like Robert, love a deep dive, go to jasperfforde.com and you can find almost anything you want to know. It is a very dense website devoted to all of his books, all of the characters. There's like deleted scenes and an upgrade, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff on there. You will lose like a whole weekend. I remember when it first launched, when the books were first coming out, and like there was a couple pages and there was neat stuff on there, and he updated it every so often. Now it's so thick, like I can't even begin to know where to go in there to find anything. But I guarantee you, Robert it's there, whatever you're looking for.
Oh, I did look for some, and mercifully, he even gave up on it himself. I forget which book it
Yes.
was, but he stopped doing that. He talks about that a little bit in our interview,
Yeah.
which people can listen to on Patreon. But yeah, it was just almost one more layer more than it needed. I felt like.
So
but,
JP, do you have? Dare I ask?
Yes, I
How
do,
much?
and
How
it's
much
the one that
longer is
bothered
your?
me the most. It's gonna be
God.
quick,
Okay.
but the one
No, it's okay.
that bothered me the most is there are too many kind of unbelievable coincidences that happen for it to be realistic. And you guys were talking earlier about one that bothered me, but you guys actually liked, which was the dad coming in at a
Oh,
certain moment,
sure.
to kind of
Yeah.
save that ends up saving the day.
Yes.
But to give the listeners an example of what I'm talking about, and there's like 7 of these that happen. To me, that's too many in the book for me to buy. One is her commander, Victor Analogy, goes undercover at this kind of secret society where they're waiting for this meteorite shower. And just as his cover is blown and a gun is drawn on him and he's in danger, this meteorite shower happens and clonks this guy with the gun on the head and knocks him out. That's one.
Now,
Well, but I mean, they
I
were
have to
waiting
jump
for the
in.
meteor shower. It's not like it
I
came out of
know,
nowhere.
but
I mean,
it
they were counting
clonks
down
the
to
one
it.
guy who's got a gun on
Right.
him on
I
the
mean,
head
that's-
and knocks him out.
He
Okay, I'm
should have put
sorry.
his helmet on.
Oh, okay.
The pedant in me makes me want to jump in and point out too, because the character does. They're not meteorites; they're meteors.
Meteor, sorry. Did I mess up and call
It's
him the
just a
wrong
great
thing? I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Meteors. Okay. Sorry.
I wouldn't say it, except one
You
of the
would have gotten
characters.
rumbled in the
talks about
second you
it.
got on that hill.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. So the meteor comes down and hits the gunman that just happens to need to be knocked him out. Another example is Thursday and her partner Bowden come across what's called a temporal distortion on the highway, and I'm envisioning this as they're kind of on this highway. There's he talked about lots of traffic, lots of people out, but there just happens to be a boy bouncing a basketball.
Yeah, I
And
don't like that whole section because my brain can't understand what the heck is happening. Like,
it's a lot. It's a lot going on, but it just I'm
but Liam feels like that's the Doctor Who of it all, that particular section. He's like, that is 100% something that would happen on Doctor Who. I guarantee
But
it.
again, visual. That would have been. That's a
Yes.
movie scene that is hard to translate from the written word into your brain. If you're
Yeah, because how many
ambering,
times have I
because
read this and I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
But having
Well,
a
I could
kid
totally
with
see.
a
I could see it on the
basketball.
screen.
Yeah, and he wasn't even sitting in the car; like he was standing on the side of the road bouncing.
I know.
the basketball.
I could not. Everything else was very visual, and I could not visualize this kid bouncing a basketball.
Now,
in
see,
this
the way that
environment.
I get around this
Uh-huh.
is the absurdity. As much as I love Jane Eyre, the
Yes.
absurdity of Jane leaving Thornfield and going off into the moors and wandering the English countryside for like 3 days. And she's just like, she's penniless, directionless. She has nowhere to go. She wanders through a couple of villages and then finally, in the middle of a rainstorm, stumbles on this household where these very kind people take her in. It's a brother and his 2 sisters, and the brother's like a preacher or something. And the fact that then they end up being her cousins,
Yeah.
like the hell.
Yeah.
Charlotte Bronte.
And look at Charles Dickens is the king of coincidences.
Yeah.
You have all of London and the same 12 characters keep bumping into each other everywhere.
Yeah,
It's like,
and I was your mother all along, and so I feel
Apparently,
like,
my personality type, I don't like that. Like,
but
when
I
there's
feel like
7
it was
of them,
deliberately placed in there because it happens in Jane Eyre and it happens in Dickens, and this is just things that happen.
I'm okay with 1 or 2. 7, no.
7.
And the book is meant to be. I mean, the book is meant to be humorous too. I shouldn't say it is humorous. No offense. It is
Right.
humorous, and if if he were Dashiell Hammett or some hard boiled guy who was trying to give us a little slice of life, then I would think the coincidences were ridiculous. But
Mhm.
I rarely side with Amber on this podcast, but I have to side with Amber on this one and say that to me, I mean, they have dodos that were cloned out of cans from a grocery store, and I mean, the book is
Yeah.
just absurd. So
Well,
I feel like, well, of course, there's going to be a boy with a basketball standing alongside of
No.
Vortex and rails.
Well, there's not.
But they needed a basketball, so he had to be there.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple instances where these events just happen to be happening the next day that they need to have happen right away, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So it just got, it was too much for me.
That's
I was,
okay.
in that kind of thing.
I mean, none of these are deal breakers, so I'm pleasantly relieved that.
I mean, it didn't keep me from enjoying the book. I just, after I was like,
if you're thinking critically,
I'm not buying that. And I would just move
on.
on.
In a way, that's kind of, I mean, I'm glad he did it more than once, because one would seem like it was lazy writing or a mistake. But obviously this is a world where apparently Thursday can just keep having these lucky, semi-almost magical things to occur.
All these people are lucky.
And yeah, I mean, I'm very much a big believer in any kind of, whether it's theater or movies or whatever, is, I will go along with anything if you set the rules. You can make up your own rules.
Yes.
If in your world there are coincidences and ridiculous, things that could never happen every 5 pages. Okay, those are the rules. What I get super frustrated by, and this book doesn't have a lot or really any that jump out, but is when they've like set up, okay, well, Doctor Who can only do this, or Jekyll and Hyde, he had to do this to whatever it is. And then the author is careless or just doesn't care and like breaks their own rule. That makes my head explode. As Amber can tell you, I did that. We have a very podcast famous episode on the movie Pleasantville, where I felt that they were breaking the rules and did a 20-minute rant filled with profanity that Dayton had to edit out finally. So anyway.
He
because
just stuck in the meme
like
2 hours later.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about, okay, if this is what we're going to just have these random coincidences and strokes of luck. Oh, keep them going. But if it had just been one, I would have been like, what? Where did this come from? This is just lame. But I thought that to me, because it was consistent, even if it wasn't my favorite thing, it fit.
Kind of like with Thursday's dad, like we established that he pops up, she never knows when, and freezes time when he does. So the fact that he does it at the opportune moment, even though you're like, oh, well, that's a plot device, but it's fine because he's been doing it through the whole book anyway.
It made me think of the old sitcom Bewitched that I used to watch in syndication when I was little. And Samantha the Witch had, like, there was her mother, it was Endora and her cousin Serena, and there was Uncle this, and all these guest stars who were uncles and aunts who would, and inevitably the episode they'd be in, just when there was a big crisis with one of the Darrens, all of a sudden, boop, oh, look, Uncle Arthur's here to fix it, or oh, look, it's Aunt Clara, or whoever, it's like, the name could have just been plot device, could have been the character name, but
Deus Ex Machina
it reminds me
arrived.
Yeah.
So
yes, exactly.
Can we move on from dislikes? Or Robert, did you have some more?
I don't have any more, but if JP wants to take the floor,
JP, is that have we?
My others are nitpicky, and we do not have to go there. I feel like I've broken your heart.
No, like I said, none of those are deal breakers. Like I can accept that there are things that we don't 100%, love. So that's okay. So just kind of like throwing things out there, as we, kind of wrap up our conversation, kind of going back to likes and just the general, tone of the book itself. I want a dodo. I want to fly on an airship. Like, I should be terrified, but they sound very elegant, very like Orient Express kind of a thing. I want to do that instead of fly on an airplane. I just love being in this place. I just think it's so interesting and so fun. And to go to, you know, Thursday's mom's house and hang out in Mycroft's uh, lab, I think would just be the best day ever. How do we feel about, kind of all these things like a will speak machine and like, do we want those on every corner? I certainly do.
Oh, I was all about the Will Speaks. I thought those were great.
How did you feel about the Richard III? I thought that was hysterical.
That
like
was
the
a
Rocky
great-
Horror
Are
Richard
we,
III.
are we going to do? Are we doing favorite chapter? Are we moving into favorite chapter and/or
Yeah,
favorite character?
we could do that. Let's go ahead and move on to like favorite characters. JP, who was your favorite character?
It
I
was
mean, can we
tough.
all agree that Thursday's the best?
Well, that's what I was saying. I kept going back and forth, and I was like, but it's Thursday. I have to say,
Right?
Thursday's my favorite character. She is this, strong, capable woman and who is also flawed. And I just really enjoyed being around her for the time I was reading the book. So, but then all these little side, characters. I actually really liked how they did Rochester from Jane Eyre. Like,
Yes.
I really liked him, and I loved Spike, with the
Mhm.
vampire hunter. So, and Mycroft's hysterical, just, you know. So, lots of characters to enjoy in
Yes. Well,
this.
and what I love being on the side of someone who has read them all many times is there's a handful, and I won't say which ones, but that are recurring throughout the series. And I'm like, you may think that this one is not your favorite, and yet 3 books in, your perspective will change.
Okay, good to know.
Robert, how about you? Who's your favorite character?
Well, I'll be a quick voice of dissent. Thursday's not my favorite character. Partly because
No.
because of the kind of character she is, which is the kind of character I don't like. She's that kind of noir first person narrator anti-hero. Thursday is not my favorite, but because I don't usually like those hard-boiled first-person film noir kind of narrators. Those Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett. I work the waterfront kind of things. She is a great character, but to me she's a trope that I don't like anyway. And I mean, yes, she's a woman, and that definitely changes the dynamic of it. But just that kind of, get the job done narrator. I don't ever enjoy them per se. But she's a great character. She did just a character type that is. But so my favorite character, I went really weird here, but it's a weird book. I should be in Spec Ops because I'm weird.
You should.
I love the bookworms.
Yes.
Mycroft's bookworms just slay me. They're hilarious and delightful. Long about toward the end of the book, where they start farting apostrophes and all of that. And then all of a sudden the book just goes off the rails, and like literally the text we're reading, which makes no sense in the context of the actual world that we're reading about. The text is filled with additional commas and hyphens and capitalized words and all these things that are hilarious and literary, but clearly would not exist anywhere except in our written page. It's not happening in their world. I mean, but that scene just makes me die laughing as they're all having these bookworms who are reading these books and then helping us along with the portal. But the section where all of a sudden just like the whole written text of the book is just going haywire because of the bookworms' reactions.
Unnecessary capitalization.
Yeah, and it's so meta, and so like we've already like turned the ridiculousness and the literariness of the book up a lot, and this is just like for 3 pages he's just like, here's what I'm doing, and it's like a visual joke for the reader, but the characters wouldn't even know this was happening, but I'm doing it for you, and just run with it till I'm tired of doing this, and then we'll go back to the book. And it made me die laughing. So I love the bookworms.
That's great. Like JP said, my favorite character is Thursday. I absolutely love and adore her. I love that she's tough. I love that she is also vulnerable. She's suffering from PTSD from being in the war. Um, she can also be kind of sappy because of her love for Landon, and she's very like, but he held my hand about it, and I love that. But I'll pick another character just so I won't be like cliche or whatever. I love Mycroft. Like the minute Thursday goes home to her mom's, Mycroft and Polly live with Thursday's mom. And Thursday comes home to visit, and she goes through the front gate, and the gate is really hard to open. And then it's really hard to close. And later on, you find out it's because Mycroft like rigged up this thing so that the force that you use to open and close the gate will now power the house for like 2 hours. And then you go into his sort of Q-esque laboratory, which is, I'm sure, a nod to Jasper Fforde having worked on the James Bond film GoldenEye. But he's throwing all these different things at her, like, here, look at this. It's a screensaver for your eyes. And, look at this. And here's the pros portal. And, like I said before, I could just spend forever in his lab, even risking being meringued. I would risk it all.
And now I always, not always, but occasionally when I'm reading, I do kind of cast these things. Like if I was making a movie, who would play the character?
Jim Broadbent.
Okay, you before I even finished. Yeah. Okay.
Is that who you had, or who did you have?
No, although he's perfect. Now that you say that, I know. I was just thinking, kind of old school Peter O'Toole when he was doing his kind of daffy.
Ooh,
daffy. The Broadbent is O'Toole is always really strong, and I think they describe Mycroft as vague more than once. And I think Broadbent can do vague in a way. Peter O'Toole, just even when he's crazy, he's still got a kind of a strength or a power to him that okay, Broadbent.
Yeah, like right. he would punch Acheron in the face before he'd let him kidnap Polly and throw her in the poem.
Well, I'm visualizing him explaining all his little things and his eyes twinkling, and
Yeah, that would be good. Here's another kind of follow-up question to that. I heard a bit of a podcast where this girl was talking about the book she described. It sounded like she was reading Outlander. And her boyfriend was like, why is it taking you so long to read this book? And she said, well, I'm struggling with the accent. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, they talk with a Scottish accent, and sometimes it's hard to understand. And, so I kind of like, I have to focus, And he's like, you're reading a book. And all of a sudden it clues into her. She's like, do you not hear accents and like voices when you read? And he's like, no, I'm reading words. What are you talking about? Like, I completely hear voices and accents and all sorts. Like, do you guys do this? Are we the outliers, or is that boy crazy?
I'm with the boyfriend. I'm with the boyfriend. It's purely a literary or a verbal experience. I can make myself, I will like pause and go like, gee, I wonder who would play Thursday, or when I'm reading, I don't ever like go into accents or go into
really
kind of stuff at all. No.
Are you? I'm like gobsmacked.
All about that French chronogard that shows up at the wedding. I'm like, ooh la la. I'm like,
see, I think because I was told once I was like kind of borderline eidetic, where I could like read a page and then like 5 years later, I can tell you like, oh, yeah, that was on this side of the page at the top or the bottom. It's just very versus creating images in my head. I'm just absorbing the meaning of the words, I guess, rather than translating.
Now, see, I can do that with a textbook, but not with a novel.
I'm with you, Amber. I'm here. I'm creating it. I'm hearing it.
Maybe it's a female male thing. We need to like crowdsource this.
But I will tell you, somebody was like, "Oh, you should listen to this book. Do an audio book." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I went in and I pulled it up, and I could only get in maybe 5 or 10 minutes because I needed each character to have their own voice, and they don't have enough money to pay that many actors to do these audiobooks. And so it's one voice for everyone. And my whole system just, I couldn't do it. I could
Yeah.
not
See,
sit.
I don't even do
The
audiobooks at all.
truly talented audiobook readers like can get you over that hump, but
Ugh.
it's so random, like the ones that can do it versus the ones that can't. Yeah, that's such a challenge for me as well. I agree. Favorite chapter. JP, what was your favorite chapter?
I am gonna go with the tie all the loose ends up chapter 33. I was gonna do the joke. Was anybody gonna do the joke about chapter 13? Or are we not gonna?
What's it?
That it doesn't exist.
Oh, that
My
it's not
favorite
there.
chapter is chapter 13. It doesn't. He doesn't put a chapter 13 in any of his books. I don't think. And but that was one thing I did go and research. I looked at the title of that chapter, in the beginning, and looked up what it was. But that that page is blank,
right,
in the book. But
I don't get that, because then there's still a chapter 13 if you count, just because you don't title it that.
Well, same thing with elevators. The buildings don't just have an invisible floor. Yeah. There is actually a 13th floor there. They just don't want to call it that.
But I found about, the title of the chapter is this, made me find this cute little cottagey church that's been around forever and a day. And I learned something,
There you go.
But chapter 33 is like when, the evil guy dies and everything gets kind of tied up, and there's a lot going on.
Yes.
And that it's very
with a nice neat little bow.
Yeah. And everything. So because I had a hard time, I was going back through, I was like, what is my favorite chapter? And I think that I needed the bad guy to get taken care of, and that's the chapter where he gets taken care of.
And I love the silver detail. I liked very much.
Yes, and so Spike's, get a little Spike coming back in, a little, warming of the heart, with that later in the book. So that was my favorite chapter.
Love it. Robert, how about you?
I just want to comment about the chapter 13 first. Yeah. I love the sentence right before that. I had to go look it up again. It says, events were starting to fall into place. And you turn the page and there's a chapter missing.
Yeah. Exactly.
What? He just tells us things are going to happen now, and you're like, but there's nothing anyway.
But where?
My favorite chapter is weirdly it's the exact midpoint of the book. Although I have to recount now as chapter 13, but chapter 18. Chapter 18 has everything. To go back to your Richard III question, Amber. It has what I like to think of as the Ricky Horror Picture Show.
That's so good. I'm totally stealing that.
with the audio, and it took me one or two sentences to realize what was happening, and then I was just crying, laughing, and I want to go to this right now. Yes, I want the Ian McKellen, Richard III playing in the theater, and I want us all there with our squirt guns and our toast and our sassy thing to yell out at the screen. Yeah. That alone would have made that my favorite chapter. The English major in me was just squealing and laughing, and it was funny. But also it was just great world building, because it was wow, you totally got this. This is an entire culture built around English literature, which is obviously not our real world, to my chagrin. But so you start with that, and that is fantastic. That could have been the whole chapter. But you also get her first reunion with Landon, and their first scene together. So you segue from this hilarity, and they leave the theater where there's joke after joke after joke about Richard III. They leave the theater, they go have their coffee, and it's this awkward, bittersweet, poignant, weird reunion where they're having this conversation they haven't spoken for such a long time, and that is just heartwarming, and really one of the times where I did see Thursday's full vulnerability, or her full she became a person, not just a literary device with the tough gal narrator. So love that. And then we slide from that. She goes home after her date with Landon and the hilarious Ricky Horror Picture Show, and then she has her crazy ass dream that is tying all these threads together, and that's where we meet Rochester. Yes. For one of the first times, I think it's the first time in the book. He speaks to her, and she scares the horse and sets all these things in motion that will pay off 170 pages later. And I just think, my God, any one of those segments would have been a great chapter, but it really, to me, encapsulated the book, where it's literary and funny and Monty Pythonish, and then it's also poignant, and it's this couple having this tough relationship, and then it's sort of surreal and dreamlike and literary again. And I thought it just did so many things and did them all well in just like 12 pages. And I was just kind of
Yes.
blown away by how much was going on just in that short page section.
I'm always amazed at how quickly you fall in love with Landon, having known nothing about him. Like, all you've done is hear about him. There's a picture. That's it. And like, you're instantly like, you two should be together. Or at least I am 100% committed to this relationship. All right. So my horror at Robert's earlier revelation that he reads in robot will be better understood when I tell you that my favorite chapter is chapter 6, Jane Eyre, A Short Excursion into the Novel. In this chapter, Thursday is remembering when Mycroft and Polly took her on a little field trip to Haworth House to see the original manuscript of Jane Eyre, among other things. So she finds herself in the room alone with the manuscript in its case. And she's young. She's like 6 or 7. And she's looking at, Charlotte Bronte's handwritten manuscript. And this Japanese woman comes over to her and says, "Would you like me to read the passage to you?" And Thursday says, "Oh, yeah." And Mrs. Nakajima, we later find out is her name, the Japanese tourist, begins to read, and all of a sudden the house melts away, and Thursday is in the book, in the scene where Jane and Rochester meet for the first time as she's walking home from having mailed a letter. And that is the best description I've ever read of what happens to me when I read a book. Like, I am literally tumbling head over heels into the story. Like, nothing exists. I am completely lost. And you have to call my name a couple times to get my attention because I'm not here. It's just nothing else exists. And I've never had that explained and described so beautifully and so accurately in my life. So that's why when Robert said he doesn't hear the voices, I'm like, and yet I hear too many.
Are you hearing them now?
I am not here. I'm not reading anything at the moment, but yeah, I used to get caught out in school all the time because, when nothing was going on in class, I'd pull my book out and then get lost in it, and half the class went by and I was not there for it.
I have all that happen. I'm just not like getting like smell-o-vision and sights and sounds and feeling the mist of the waterfall on me and all that. I'm just
my gosh,
taking in
maybe
the
you're reading the wrong things. All right, so let's do a rating. How would you rate this book on a scale of 1 to 5 dodos, 5 being the best? JP, how would you rate this book? We know what my rating is.
Oh yeah, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. I say,
hey, that's really good.
It is a very entertaining read, and I'm very curious. I want to know from both of you who have read the other ones.
Oh, please, God, keep reading.
Well, yeah, but is there a favorite out of the other ones that you have? But we can answer that later. That's just kind of gearing,
I don't know, because 2 is really good, and 2 introduces a whole nother layer to this universe that you didn't know existed. You have hints of it, but now you get into it. But I don't know.
Okay, well,
it's hard to say.
Yeah,
but 2 is really good, and 3 is really good.
Okay, but I say 4 out of 5. I'd say there's, like I said, I think for his first book, he just tried to do too much.
Yeah,
that he didn't have to do.
Will you
still have
recommend
it.
this to others, or will you go back to your mysteries
Oh,
as your recommendation?
well, that depends on who I'm talking to.
Well, fair.
Yeah, because not everybody is going to want, they're not into this kind of sci-fi, the world.
Yes.
And so you just have to know who your audience is for
Good
that kind of
point.
thing.
Good point.
But yeah, I actually have a friend I need to let him know about it because he likes sci-fi stuff. And I wonder, do you think someone who's on the spectrum, on the autism, could they get through this book, do you think? If they're a reader?
There are readers that they should. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, because I was just
everybody's
thinking,
different, but
yeah.
See if they've read Ready Player One. I think if you liked Ready Player One, you'll like this.
Okay.
That's a good comparison, I think.
Yeah. But anyway, I think it, like I said, very entertaining read. It's a fast-paced read. Lots of cool characters, and he just tried to do too much.
Yay. I'm so glad you weren't like, oh, this is 2 weeks. I'm not getting back.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Robert, how about you? How many dodos?
I'm going to give it 5 modified dodos. Genetically altered
Version
dodos.
1.2.9 or something.
Yeah, well, because JP hit the nail on the head. This is not a book for everyone. If it's the kind of thing you like, you will love it. It's right up my alley, so I would call it a 5. I have friends who read everything, and they would probably despise this book because it's just not. It's so much, and there's so many things. It's just not what they want to do. So it's a genetically altered 5. But luckily, I mean, I have a few books, and I think this is probably one of yours, Amber. I have books that they're like the deal breaker books, or it used to be like when I was like a teenager, they were like deal breaker movies. Like if we were on a date and I showed you this movie I loved and you did not love the movie I loved, there was no second date.
Yes.
It was like that. They were, and so this book is, for me, is such a weird book. I could never use it as like a deal breaker book because it's so special. So that's why my rating kind of here and there, but for me it's a 5. For other people, it will be genetically modified down to whatever their appreciation level of it is.
Yeah.
Well, mine is a 5, full stop, and I will, regardless of the personality type, I will never stop recommending this book to every single person that asks me, like, do you have a book I should read? Because I think maybe, like JP, you like mysteries, and you wouldn't have probably picked this up on your own. And so, maybe people just need to be introduced to different things. So I will constantly keep trying. So having said that, it would be a deal breaker, but I don't think I can use it like that because, like you said, it really depends on the person. And I would have to be appreciative of the fact that they tried. And, they tried it. They didn't like it, but they gave it a shot. So I would, however, file that knowledge away to add to subsequent knowledge. And that might, make or break things.
It'd be a little weight on the scale, and eventually,
yes.
So
yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that as he went on with the other books, that he also was learning as a novelist.
Yes.
Better storytelling technique.
Well,
so that's why
they get easier because he's done so much heavy lifting in this book. Then the next book, when they talk about special ops, they talk about portals, they talk about, and there's this book is trying to put 10 dogs in a 3-bag dog.
That's why I'm saying that's why I was curious what you thought that your next. Robert, do you have a next favorite one in the series?
I read them all like back to back to back to back up to the ones that had been published, so they're kind of one big massive book to me because they were like data chips. I just kept going, okay, that one done, next one. So I was, yeah, I think he hit his stride in like 2 and 3, and I honestly don't listen to this part, Jasper. I love you, but like by books 5 and 6, I thought like maybe he was, I don't know, like maybe gone to the well too many times. There's still an arc, but just to me, like I said, part of the fun of these is the ingenuity and the cleverness and the freshness. And I like being in that world, but there wasn't as much novelty or surprise to it. So it
Okay.
was a different kind of experience.
Okay.
But I will say this, I'm the sort of person, like my brothers love the Wheel of Time series, and that freaking thing is, we're running up on like book number 22, I think. Like the guy is dead and his son is writing him or something. So like by about book 6, like my energy waned and I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, it's a great story, but I just don't even care. I'm a real like trilogy person. So the fact that I love all of these and can maintain that stamina, and I'm looking forward to the 8th book, I think there's enough there to keep you going. Because otherwise I had have been like, eh. All right, friends. Oh my goodness, this was so much fun. That does it for our discussion of the Eyre Affair. I want to thank my guests for joining me and introducing this book to a wider audience. So thank you, Robert.
Well, thank you for asking me, and thank you again for introducing me to this book in the first place.
And thank you, JP.
Yes, I am so excited you asked me to do this because, like I said, I love learning new things and discovering new things. So this was a great treat.
And thank you to Jasper Fforde for writing such wildly entertaining books and for joining us for an enjoyable interview. Like I said before, listeners, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, please go check it out. You won't be disappointed. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. Without you, we wouldn't get to do what we do here on Docking Bay 77. Please join us on social media and keep the conversation going. Have you read The Eyre Affair? Will you read The Eyre Affair? Will you read all the way through to the upcoming 8th and final book in the Thursday Next series? And have you read any of Jasper Fforde's other books? He's got a couple of really great other collections going. We are available on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Discord for that conversation. And if you like what you hear, check out our Patreon for extended and bonus episodes. Coming up is our special 200th episode celebration. Join us as we reminisce about the podcast and review the Ocean's 11 remake starring George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Julia Roberts. Remember to read more books. And as always, physical media is better than streaming.
The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson, recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.